Hi! Welcome back to another episode of Chronicles of a Blank Girl. I'm your blank girl, Michelle, and I'm glad that you're back. And today we are talking about how to set the boundaries that we spoke about last week. If you haven't seen that video, make sure to go back and watch it so you can get a context about what we're going to talk about here today. I am so excited to introduce you to Natasha Cruz. Tasha grew up, as I call her because I love her, in Queens, New York. In 2012, she graduated with her BA in psychology from Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan. Against all odds, she decided to pursue her graduate degree at Loma Linda University in California and graduated with her MS in marriage and family therapy. Upon graduating, she has made it her goal to work with families who share a similar background as hers. She says, and I quote, "I know what it's like to come from nothing, to be told you won't amount to anything, and doubted because of uncontrollable factors like your race, your sex, or your family dynamics. I've seen the effects of intergenerational trauma firsthand, and I'm here to make a difference." She has worked in San Bernardino, California, the Riverside, California's District Attorney's Office, and Safe Horizon in New York City. Natasha is currently working with homeless and runaway at-risk youth in the state of Vermont. How do you actually set the boundary? When do you know to set it? And who do you set it with first? All these questions and more will be answered in the next couple of minutes. Make sure that you subscribe, that you're getting up-to-date notifications about the channel, and I'm so glad again that you're here on this journey of self-love. We are here with my girlfriend, Tasha. She is my life coach, life therapist, and I'm so excited that she agreed to do this. Tasha, how are you doing?
I'm good. Just quarantining up here in Vermont. Trying to make the best of it, I'm good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I know that in our generation, we have struggled with boundaries. It's just a thing that we always have had a problem with. And I've got so many questions from people saying, well, how do I do it? How do I? I said, wait a minute. I gave you a book recommendation. So I said, you know what? Let me go a step further and actually talk to a professional. So walk us through it. How on earth, why even set a boundary, and where does it even start, and where do we go?
I think it's definitely important to acknowledge that it's difficult. It can be difficult to set boundaries, right? Because you can be used to a pattern and think that that particular person's behavior or that situation is normal and not really acknowledge that it's causing you anxiety or stress. So I think first and foremost, it's important to acknowledge, sit back, um, take some deep breaths if you must, talk to a friend, look inward and figure out, okay, so what is the situation bringing up for me? So once you acknowledge and you recognize, okay, this situation is causing me stress, what do I need to do to prevent that stress from happening? It could be a cycle that you're in, so you got to figure out, okay, what part of the cycle do I want to stop? Is it like you said, it could be a person, it could be a situation. So then this is the tough part, right? Is saying, okay, now I need to confront or do something about this. It's either confronting myself or confronting the other person. And it depends who it is, right? If it's family, I feel like for me, family's the hardest to confront because it's like I don't want to start drama, I don't want anything. Or if it's a friend, it's kind of like, hey, you kind of tiptoe around it and you're like, the other day when you did such, such and such thing. So identifying it, acknowledging it, being gentle with yourself and knowing that it's okay to feel how you're feeling and figuring out, okay, so how do I want to approach it? Do I want to talk to the person directly? Do I need to remove myself from the situation? Do I need to set a time for this person? So for example, in quarantine, right? There's so much going on. Like quarantine has not been easy for a lot of people, and people who experience anxiety and depression. It can be extra difficult because you're like in your head all day, um, and on top of what's going on in our country. And this week has been so insanely intense for me, I can say for sure.
Yeah.
So creating boundaries around who has access to you.
Mm.
Um, we have our phones on us 24/7. There's people in our house 24/7. So that's a boundary, saying I'm going to put my phone on do not disturb from this time to that time.
Mm.
Um, Listen, sometimes we need to create boundaries with ourselves.
Say
sometimes
that.
sometimes we need to create boundaries with us and say, are we the problem? Is it
Hmm.
us? So there's so many different ways to go around it, about it, but it takes a lot of work. This isn't going to be something that happens overnight in
Right.
one day. It's like a muscle. You have to work it out. You have to work it out. And when you go to the gym, muscles, to create a muscle, it has to rip, and it hurts. It hurts so much.
I want to go back to this muscle analogy, right? Because you hit me in my nerve. I work out like crazy. And you're absolutely right. I never thought about that. I know when I was building muscle at first, the ripping part, like I didn't understand, why do I have to break something to create something? That doesn't really, like, it sounds great, right? It sounds like a Shakespearean play. Like, yes, break it to create it. But in
Yeah.
real life, it hurts. Like, literally, you can, especially when you're working on your legs. When
Mhm.
I do a squat and I'm lifting all the, my friends were like, Michelle, you're lifting 10 plates on the leg press. And I sit there like, yeah, I mean, but I did not start with 10 plates. I started with like 2 plates and then I worked my way up to 10. And if I'm honest with you, which I'm not going to ever tell my trainer I actually said this, don't watch this if you're
I would
watching this.
edit it out.
So I remember when she was trying to push me to go beyond what I thought I could do. I
Mm-hmm.
remember when she was like, you can do more than this. And I said, no. And the one thing that she said to me that really stuck to me was there was a day that I went in and I did 4 plates the day before. And then I went back to 3 plates at the end of that week. And she calmly walked up to me and said, you'll never move forward if you don't start where you left off. And I was like, ooh, she's like, if you keep going back, you're not going to build anything because you already can do that weight.
Mm-hmm.
But now when you put more weight, when you put more on there, it stresses the muscle and it forces it to grow. So can you give us some examples about forcing it to grow? Where is there a boundary? Like, so say that I have a friend and
Mm-hmm.
this friend tends to make me feel pretty bad. Like they always have little slight comments. They're that one friend that we just can't seem to get rid of because we have had them for so long, but really they're just like a triangle and a square, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just not working out. And no matter how much we try to fit into the same peg, we're just, how do we go about creating a boundary with this person? How do we go about telling this person, this is where I end?
Isn't working out anymore. It's, again, acknowledging that it's difficult. I know some people. I've been in similar situations, and I've sought counsel from other people, and some people have told me, "Yo, just cut them out." Like that. And I'm like, wait, but this is someone I know for a long time.
Yes.
And then we respond to it the way that we've learned to manage anxiety, manage whatever situation. So when it comes to setting boundaries with other people, they're always going to respond to your boundary because they've been used to, like, you, um, they've been used to a certain you, and they've been used to a certain friendship and relationship with you. So you've been here, and all of a sudden this baseline, you're interrupting it, and then the whole system flow or whatever you had going on goes out of whack. So now there's two opposing chaotic systems that you're managing your own, and you have to say, okay, I am not responsible for that right now
Mm,
because I set my boundary. I'm not
mm.
responsible for consoling that person's reaction, or because that kind of undoes the boundary, right? You say, oh, you hurt me, I'm cutting you out.
Yes,
But then
exactly,
but then,
exactly.
I'm sorry. Are you okay? Did I hurt your feelings? Like,
Like it's about you, not me right now. I
yeah.
know that I need to set the boundary, but I will not do it if it's going to cause you emotional turmoil.
Ideally, I'd like to say the best way to go about it is to be honest and, kind, and explain it. But, life isn't like that. Life isn't a cookie cutter perfect situation. I think the best way to go about it is how you feel most comfortable. Um, I've had people set boundaries with me through text messages. Like, and it's kind of like, on my end, I'm like, that's disrespectful. Like, you couldn't even tell me to my face, like, hello.
Yes.
But I have to understand, like, for that person, that's what felt most comfortable. Obviously, in my books, but there goes that systemic dynamic that, you're only responsible for yourself.
So say that it's someone a little bit closer that's hurting you. So we talked about friendships, but what about when it's internal? For example, yes people who always say yes to everything, or people who say no to everything because they're afraid.
Right.
There's extremes, right? Say you're in a conversation with somebody that you care about and they are constantly going against what you're saying, and it's causing you to start to question some things inside. How do you handle boundary setting within? How do you go about even understanding that there's a boundary that needs to be set in the first place? Because sometimes people just, they don't know. Like, for example, I used to be a habitual latecomer. Like, I just cannot get anywhere on time. This is not a race thing. This is a Michelle thing, because I know plenty of colored people who arrive on time to places. Okay.
Yes.
I'm not one of those people. Okay. So at the time, I had a problem with always arriving late. So one day, my senior pastor was like,
listen.
Cup. Right? Let me talk to you real quick. And he explained to me that it's unprofessional to arrive to places between 10 and 15 minutes late when you're invited to a conference or a meeting. And this was a boundary that I felt like I had a problem with, because I could not, for the life of me, get myself to get up and leave my home at a time that would allow me to arrive to the place on time. And so it's funny because I realized when it was appointments with other people, I was late. But when it was an appointment for myself, I was on time. And I feel like I don't know how I had to go about it to figure out, Michelle, this isn't right. You're not doing it right. So I'm kind of asking, when it's internal, how do you even start to recognize I have a problem? And how is it that sometimes, because we like to tell people, well, that's a you thing, not a me thing. But if multiple people are telling you the same thing, that's a you thing.
It's a you thing. And again, that's one of those, like, really hard, like, life comes through and kind of smacks you in the face. I mean, with addiction and with all these other substance abuse problems, it's usually a rock bottom moment. Like, I know with mental health diagnosis, like, in the diagnostic manual, like the official book that you use to diagnose, pretty much, like, most diagnoses, like anxiety and depression, they are there because they're impairing your day-to-day, right? So pretty much, like, everyone has a certain level of anxiety, right? But you're coming into therapy being diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder because it has impaired certain areas in your life: work, social, personal, whatever it may be. So that's one way, you can go to a therapist and talk those feelings out. But what does it take for you to go to a therapist, right? It takes a certain, like aha moment, or like a oh crap moment, So I think when it's internal, it's a hard one, because it's hard for a person who's in that, who doesn't have that, to realize that, like, reaching out might be good.
When reaching out goes bad, that's a problem. They tend to reach out to the wrong people.
Reach out to the people who will give you the advice that you want to hear.
Exactly.
And that's not always good. Yeah, sometimes you need to hear, like, oh yeah, you look fine in that shirt. Fine, like,
positive affirmation.
Call those people. Always call those people. But sometimes you need people to be like, listen, you're messing up, and I'm coming at you from a place of love, and you're able to receive it from a place of love. So I guess what I would say to somebody, or who's struggling with internal boundaries, is, like, really just doing a self-check and sitting down with yourself and figuring out, okay, like, maybe not so much even going through, like, a what's wrong with me checklist, maybe that's not the best approach, but doing an inventory. What are areas that I want to grow in? What are some things that I need to improve? You know, how can I go about it? There's so many motivational, um, there's so many good books. Like I know you love recommending books, so I was ready.
I do. I was gonna tell you, give me your books. Give me your books.
So listen, Sonia Sotomayor, right? I didn't grow up
Oh,
with a lot of
love her.
influential Latina woman, successful, down to earth, you know. And I'm like, that's why I pursued my degree. That and I need to read and intellectualize like what does a successful woman look like? What did they have to go through? What did they
Mhm.
do? And it's so important to for me because Sonia Sotomayor came from nothing. You know, she came from a single parent household like I did, and she's the Supreme Court justice.
She
Hey,
sure is,
you know,
and a great at that. Mm-hmm.
so many different factors influence your own internal conversation. And hopefully, this video will like be a little bit of a wake up call if you're in a place where you're kind of like, I need something needs to change. Like, listen to that voice for sure. Shonda Rhimes' year of saying yes.
Yes, a year of yes.
Yeah. And I can't remember right now what led her. I know it was like a conversation and it was just such a simple thing. Like her sister they were cooking in the kitchen and her sister was like, you always say no to everything. It was a simple thing like that. And Shonda was like, oh, really? So for a whole year, she said yes to everything.
Eddie. Uh-huh.
She talks about, and it's crazy like that intern. She's this amazing writer. She owns
Yeah.
Thursday Night. She has Shonda Land. Like, so she's so beautifully like describes her internal dialogue in those moments. And if that's a book, if you find yourself in that situation that you need to start saying yes more.
So here's my recommendation for today. This book, It's More Than Enough. It was written by Elaine Welteroth.
She's the editor of Vogue, right? Of
She
Teen Vogue.
is. She's
Yes.
actually FOD. She's the first only different because she's the first Black female editor, right, of Teen Vogue. And she's like the second woman, but the first woman of color. And she basically talks about being able to claim space no matter where you are. And I think that these internal dialogues are very necessary. That's why I wanted to talk about boundaries with a professional, because I felt like hearing it from me is one thing, but hearing it from someone who does this for a living is a whole other ballgame, you know? Definitely a therapist who knows, who's dealt with this before, with people that have addictions and people that have issues that they're having a hard time living life just on a daily basis. And one of the first things that they should be doing is an internal self-talk. It's a self-check. It's a, why does this bother me so much? And I think that people don't take the time to do those things. And you're absolutely right. We're not in a culture that tells you to check yourself. It tells you to check everybody else first.
Right.
Check them, you know, create boundaries with them, but creating boundaries with yourself, unheard of. So you are amazing. I appreciate you coming on and giving us some words of wisdom. I'm excited. Tell my 20 viewers one more piece of advice that you would give them in terms of self-love, because that's what we're on. We're on self-love right now, which is why I'm not wearing the hair that would match yours. I mean, mine's a store-bought. Yours go out of your scalp. Thank you, Biden, hashtag. But we're on a journey of self-love, and I told my viewers that we would get to love ourselves. And so can you give us a healthy tip on how can I implement loving myself?
I would say be gentle with yourself and set gentle goals and take it day by day. Pretty much that's it.
I'm excited that you came on, Tasha. I'm so happy we did this.
Thank you so much for having me. I had fun. It's like our normal conversations, like
right, just recording for everybody else to see.
This level of depth, like every time we're on the phone. We're like, oh, do you have 5 minutes? And it turns into like a 2-hour conversation.
An hour conversation. I love it. What are friends for? Not to lift each other up, right? So Tasha is also on Instagram, and you can follow her. She is Tasha Life Coach, and if you you definitely should follow her. She has some great tips, and then she posts cute puppies. So you know, if you have a moment and you're scrolling and you just want to like have a feel good moment, you can definitely go to her page. She's got great quotes, and she is working on developing the page more and more, and you can get in contact with her through there.
Yes. And if you ever have any questions or you just want advice on anything, feel free to message me.
Tasha, thank you so much for being with us. We're so happy that you came on. We know that life is extremely busy with this quarantine stuff. I know you had a million things planned for tonight, but I thank you for putting those things aside and coming to spend time with your friend down here in Texas. Much love to you, and we thank you so much for being here on Chronicles of a Blank Girl, which today's is Chronicles of a Boundary Setting Girl. So thank you for being here, Tash.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Oh. Hello, Michelle's chair.